Hi everybody and welcome back to Lost Genre Mother-in-Law Stories. For today's video, I've got 4 stories for you about mothers-in-law that range between annoying and crazy. But before we begin, don't forget about Lost Genre AITA Daily, a channel dedicated exclusively to Am I the A-hole? So now, let's get started with the first story. Well, I'm the recipient of a blessing and a curse. I recently married a wonderful man, but I gained a rude, insensitive, manipulative, and childish mother-in-law. Thank heaven she lives overseas. With the wedding here in the States, mother-in-law and father-in-law visited for 2 weeks. My mother-in-law refused to learn even a little English before visiting the US because, according to her, everybody in America speaks German. Dear husband had asked that she make the cakes for the dessert table, which she agreed to, because that would keep her busy and out of our hair. They arrived the Wednesday before the wedding, which was on that Saturday. And just as I suspected, she refused to make the cakes for the wedding. Luckily, I had called a very understanding bakery earlier that week and ordered about half of the cakes we needed, and I was prepared to make the rest on my own. Mother-in-law ended up agreeing after dear husband and father-in-law begged to make 6 cakes. I made 3. Dealing with her and my father, who is a recovering alcoholic with an anxiety disorder and is also a 66-year-old behaving like he is 4, was very difficult 2 days before the wedding. The wedding and reception went great, despite mother-in-law going up to guests and expecting them to understand her German. There were only a couple of German-speaking guests at the wedding, but they are like me, they only know polite conversational German and how to order off a menu. The week after the wedding was hard. Mother-in-law was such a pain, especially at restaurants. She would complain that she didn't like anything on the menu. Dear husband would translate for her. She would say mean things to the servers. Luckily, they didn't understand. Father-in-law had to order for her while she pouted. He would order something for himself that he thought she may like, and then he would order for her something that he liked. When the food came out, mother-in-law wanted what father-in-law ordered, and they would trade plates. I thought we were dealing with a 4-year-old. Wherever we went, she would point at people, stare, and say something in German to them. Father-in-law would have to literally drag her away in embarrassment. The worst was the night before mother-in-law and father-in-law left for Germany. We got the photos developed from disposable cameras that we left on tables at the reception. Yes, my wedding was a while back. Mother-in-law was going through all the pictures and taking photos and negatives. I was upset about this because we were going to get duplicates and put certain pictures in with the thank you cards. I told dear husband that she can take some of the pictures, but not the negatives. I had to leave the room. It was too stressful. While I was in another room, an argument broke out between dear husband and mother-in-law about the photos and the luggage. Dear husband needed to pack their luggage so that all the things they bought would fit. Mother-in-law wanted her suitcase back and started crying loudly. I came into the living room and she was bent over, clutching her stomach and wailing. Dear husband then told father-in-law that he can stay, but mother-in-law has to go. Father-in-law was shocked that dear husband would kick his own mother out of his house. Dear husband then said that he doesn't put up with this in his house and told mother-in-law that she behaved like a small child. So dear husband, father-in-law, and mother-in-law all left for the hotel they were staying at. As soon as they go outside, mother-in-law stopped crying and asked what the big deal was and why dear husband was angry with her. The next day, when we dropped them off at the airport to fly home, she acted like nothing had happened. Dear husband and I left for our honeymoon that day. Now I understand the true reason for a honeymoon. To get away from the mother-in-law. Yikes, what a piece of work of a mother-in-law you got there, OP. Like you say, good thing is she lives overseas. Also good thing, your husband is willing and has done it, kicking his mother out of his own house. Amazing. Standing applause for that man. Standing applause. Alright, and now we move on to the next story. My mother-in-law was the most irrational that I've ever seen her during the planning of our wedding. I was more than willing to have both mothers, mine and his, involved with helping out if they wanted to. But as soon as mother-in-law started up on her stupid behavior, I decided that I wasn't going to let her be involved. She was just really annoying. All the time, she had something to say, to complain about on absolutely everything. She royally ticked me off on several occasions, and the worst thing she pulled was just days before the wedding. I was convinced she was going to ruin our wedding, and I didn't even want her there. First, she and her mother complained that we weren't getting married in a church. Dear husband and I are not religious at all, and mother-in-law and grandmother-in-law do not know that he is an atheist. Then they insisted that we use their florist. We didn't. We used the one my family has always used. That made her mad. Don't ask me why. Then she complained that the photographer we picked was too expensive, even though we paid for it. She said she was going to give me a list of photographers that her co-workers had used, even though we'd already booked our photographer. She then complained about what stores we chose for wedding registries. She kept pushing, that we choose a particular store because it was a store she liked to shop at and it was, she said, affordable. Well, I later compared the prices of things we chose at our store and the store she wanted us to pick. Everything was more expensive at her store. I told her repeatedly that we were not going to register at that store and that we already picked 2 stores. Then one day I said, we finished setting up the registries at X store and Y store. She actually said, oh, but I thought you would register at Z, her store. After I told her 10 different times that we didn't like that store, she thought we were going to go there. She was just mad because she likes that store and our registry forced her to shop elsewhere. Mother-in-law and grandmother-in-law got really mad at us over our guest list because we had the nerve to choose who we would and would not be inviting. I tell you, for someone who never once offered to help us with one darn thing and wasn't paying for 1 red cent of our wedding, she had an awful lot to say about every single thing. We never even got a wedding gift from her own son, and she never bought a wedding gift. She gave us a card with a post-it note stating, I owe you. Well, that's fine, but that was almost a year ago now, and still nothing. Not that I am angry about not getting a gift. I don't care about that. But it's her own son, and to put a stupid post-it note in a card was the absolute ultimate in tacky. Even a card with nothing in it and a verbal explanation later would have been fine. She's not exactly rich, and her post-it stated that she needed to wait to get us a gift. Well, fine, whatever, but come on, an IOU? She even took the liberty of signing brother-in-law and sister-in-law's name on it. They were both in the wedding party and they couldn't even get us a stupid card by themselves. Mommy had to do it for them. They are 23 and almost 22, which I feel is grown up enough to buy a stupid card. They are both such babies. Brother-in-law knew how much his tux rental would be and had 6 months to save up for it. In the end, he needed my dear husband to pay for it for him, and he never paid us back. These people are so incredibly tacky. My parents paid for the whole reception and the entire florist bill. Also, my mom took care of having a lady do our makeup for me and my 3 bridesmaids. My father-in-law and his wife, he and mother-in-law are divorced, paid for the whole rehearsal dinner and gave us one hell of a wedding gift. Mother-in-law did nothing, paid for nothing, and had the nerve to make the following statement. This wedding is going to cost me enough as it is. BS. All she bought was a stupid dress for herself to wear. That was it. Yeah, she got us gifts for the shower that my mother and sister planned and paid for. But that was the extent of her involvement in anything. She never once told us congratulations, unless she said it to her son out of my presence, but I sure as heck never heard it, and never once told me welcome to the family. My father-in-law and his whole family fell over themselves congratulating us, wishing us the best and welcoming me to the family. Thankfully, my dear husband is more like his father's side of the family. Well, OP, at least apparently you had a really nice wedding, considering your mother-in-law was one of those people that complain about everything and contribute nothing. So good for you. Alright, and now let's move on to the third story. Here is the mother of all mother-in-laws. I promise you, this mother-in-law is my sister-in-law, my brother's second wife. She is a real psycho. She has never been able to get along with anybody. She has only one child, a son from her previous marriage. Quitting school, sorry jobs, and failing at almost everything she has ever done over the decades has made her obsessively jealous of anything good anyone else does or gets. Here's how she lost her only child forever, and it was over jealousy of her own sister that did it. The mother-in-law of this story married twice, but chose each time to have very small weddings. These weddings were 30 years ago and 20 years ago. As the years went by and family weddings, siblings, cousins, etc. happened, it became obvious that the larger and nicer the wedding, the more jealous of the couple she became. Case in point, her youngest sister married a few years ago and had a huge cathedral wedding, posh reception, etc. And she was so jealous and mean during the weeks before the wedding that she tried to break up her sister and her fiancé. She wasn't allowed at the wedding. In fact, the couple hired an off-duty cop to stand guard in case she showed up. Just 2 years later, the only child and son of this nutjob of a mother-in-law announces his engagement to a wonderful girl that mother-in-law had praised many times. Within 3 weeks of the engagement, they disowned her. Why? Because she was determined that their wedding had to outdo her sister's huge wedding just 2 years earlier. They did not want a large wedding, they did not want to compete, etc. She began threatening them, but once seeing that she could not have her way, she tried to get her own son fired from his job, tried to get the pastor of the couple not to perform the ceremony, tried to interfere with her son's fiancé's custody of her child by calling and trying to form a plot with the ex-husband. And finally, she threatened, on voicemail, shake my head, to kill the fiancé of her son. So, they took out a restraining order against the mother-in-law-to-be and also hired a cop to be at their wedding and reception in case she showed up. Within a 2-year period, this woman was kept away from her sister's and her own son's weddings by armed guards. Obviously, she has been disowned by both couples. However, she continues to be forgiven without apologies, tolerated, protected, and defended by her parents and other siblings. This is like harboring a terrorist. She will get in serious trouble someday. Wow, she is a psycho. That's all I'm gonna say because I think that says it all. Alright, let's move on to the final story. My boyfriend's mother absolutely baffles me. This is the first long-term relationship I've been in, and maybe it's just me, but I honestly think her behavior is not normal. For example, my boyfriend is 28 and his mother still buys him deodorant and shower gel, 3 packs at a time, like he's not capable of buying his own toiletries. She phones him several times a day. Recently, while we were out, she phoned and left a message on our home asking him to call. She left the same message on his mobile, then on my mobile. I was the first to pick up the message and I passed it on because I figured if she was calling my mobile asking him to call, it must be urgent. When he called her in a panic, she said she just wanted to wish us a good trip to the theater, and he doesn't see anything odd in this. When we visited recently, she said she had something for him and came back into the room with a pair of underpants. Her explanation was that she had seen them whilst out shopping and thought he would like them, but they didn't have them in his size. She bought a smaller size so he could see them, and if he liked them, she would get him some when they were back in stock. She pulls a guilt trip if we don't visit them at least once a month. But when we visit, she will flat out blank me if he's not in the room. Even if I ask her how she is and we are the only two people in the room, she won't reply, but acts like I haven't spoken. My boyfriend refuses to believe she does this. When we are there and she is dishing up dinner, she will ask him if that is enough potatoes for me, even though I'm in the room. My boyfriend is an only child and his mother doesn't seem to have any interests in life other than him and his dad. This is now causing problems between my boyfriend and me, as she has brought him up to be totally selfish and spoiled. Everything has to go his way. This wasn't noticeable until we moved in together, as we only saw each other on weekends, a long-distance relationship. The final straw happened this week though, as my younger sister was about to start renting a house with her boyfriend and it all fell through on the day they were due to move in. She and her boyfriend will be homeless in 10 days. I said to my boyfriend that if they didn't manage to find another house, I wanted them to stay with us until they did. We have 2 spare rooms. He said he would only accept that and he wouldn't be happy about it if they tried to get into the local hostel first, and we were the absolute last resort as his mother was planning to visit for a weekend in 3 weeks, which I am dreading, and they would have nowhere to sleep. Like, his mom visiting is more important than my sister being homeless. I could go on and on about her weird behavior. But what I'm trying to figure out is if my relationship is salvageable. He genuinely doesn't seem to realize when he's being selfish and controlling, which I think is totally a result of his upbringing. Ultimately, I'm not sure that he will change, and I know that she is a lost cause. Well, OP, I think you answered your own question. Get out of there. Like the poet's Iron Maiden said, run for the hills, run for your life. Unless your boyfriend goes through a huge, life-changing, humility-adding situation, he's not going to change. And don't even think about saying, oh, maybe marriage will change him, maybe children will change him. That's a no on the first one and a double no on the second one. So just get out of there. Don't waste any more of your time. Why would you? Throughout your whole post, you never once mentioned that you loved him, so I'm guessing you don't. Get out. Alright, and so we've reached the end of the video. I truly hope you guys liked these stories today. If you did, go ahead and click like. If you still haven't subscribed, go ahead and subscribe. And of course, don't forget about the new channel, Lost Genre IATA Daily, and don't forget about the Lost Genre subreddit where you can share or cross-post stories. And having said all that, I will see you guys in the next video.